Barnhill on the line. Carla is our advice giver. Carla's our advice guru. Carla's the one who helps us make the decision. Should we do this or that? Carla, you know who you should be giving advice to today?
Who's that?
Rick Santorum, who's supposed to be on our radio show, and he's in town right here. I mean, within miles, and he's been dodging us.
Why is he dodging you?
I don't know. We've been asking the most religious candidate to come on religious radio that's not quite right, and he's dodging us.
How about Ron Paul? Did you get him on there? He was at Bethel yesterday, you know.
He was.
No. Yes, he was.
No, we didn't have him on there. How did he do?
He's in town too. I don't know. I didn't go.
Oh. Well, we thought that the guy who proclaims and professes more religious perspective would enjoy the religious show, but we got nothing out of him. Not even a response.
And he's the guy who's been endorsed by the Christians, right?
That's what I'm getting at. So we thought, well, we should then, if he wanted anything at all, he should come on the religious show.
Yeah, maybe if you'd have been one of those 100 people invited to Texas, he would have said yes.
You know what? We should have our own.
You weren't on that list,
You and I and John and well, we'll include Will because he, Brian. Sure. We should have our own little meeting, decide who we're going to endorse for all kinds of things.
We should just have a collection of 100 people. Nobody knows who they are, so they can be whatever 100 people we want. And like my kids could be in there.
That's right.
And as a group, we will make these sorts of decisions and declarations. This is who we're going to support.
Yeah, and we think you should too.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have
if you were good like us, that's what you would do. I like it.
Well, Carla's our advice giver. Carla, what's on the advice docket for today?
We're going to talk about anxiety today.
Oh boy. Okay.
What do you think about that?
I think that's a very good thing.
That topic makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Does it? Okay. Well, we're going to help with that.
I had flashes of anxiety in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I think it's funny. Most people deal with a little bit of anxiety. In one way or another. Some people, to kind of a debilitating degree where they need, No, I mean, it's not funny. I'm serious. Like people that they have panic attacks. And,
Doug is laughing and mocking at those people.
I don't
Those weak people, he's thinking.
No, there are people that have, it's such a big issue for them that they'll wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because they're panicked, their heart's racing, and they feel like they're about to, their chest is about to explode. And it's a real issue.
This show is not committed to people with anxiety. It's committed to people in the middle. It's like my Mitt Romney.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't worry about people with anxiety.
For those people.
I like having anxiety. Yeah.
Are there no workhouses? Isn't that what Scrooge says in Christmas Carol?
That's right.
That's kind of what he just said, isn't it?
It sort of is. In fact, after your segment, if you want to stick around, we're going to have a little commentary, a little conversation about the presidential campaign. If you want to stick around and chitter chatter about it, because I've got a little thing I worked up.
That's tempting. Anyway, so we're going to talk about anxiety, and I think it's a good time to talk about that a little bit because of the election cycle coming up. It pushes buttons for people, gets people all worked up about stuff, and sometimes the fact that we have sort of low-level anxiety about things sort of in our everyday life, it comes out in our conversations about these bigger things.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're kind of living in this kind of on the edge of sanity anyway, and then somebody comes along and says something we don't like, and we just blow up at them. And it's an expression of something deeper happening in us and less about the topic at hand. So we're going to talk about anxiety because it's one of those things, like I said, I think most people deal with in some capacity, at some level. Maybe not you, apparently, laughing at the anxious among us. But, so we're going to talk about that. So, first I wanted to talk about why it's a problem. I mean, obviously, if you're somebody who suffers from severe panic attacks or severe anxiety attacks, it's obvious why it's a problem. But for a lot of us, we sort of get comfortable living with that low level of anxiety, and we don't even notice how it impacts our decision-making anymore because it's just kind of become a natural part of us. So, the last time I was on a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the life list.
Yes.
And you remember that?
I do.
Has everybody been busy working on theirs? But anxiety can kind of be one of the things that gets in the way of moving forward with a list like that or moving forward with the things you want out of life because it gets you focused on the what-ifs, the bad what-ifs, instead of on the what's next. So that's why we want to push back on anxiety, no matter how severe it is or how mild it is, to kind of, when you feel it coming up, to push it away and kick it to the curb a little bit. So I have 3 suggestions, always, the magical 3, on how to put anxiety in its place. And the first suggestion, then, is to give it a nod. Say hello to it.
Oh.
Oddly enough. Because when
Hello, anxiety.
Exactly. What who? Yeah, when you ignore it, you actually kind of give it more power, because then it just kind of stays in there festering. And when you kind of look it in the eye and say, okay, what is this? Why am I feeling anxious or nervous or worried or afraid? What's happening? When you look at it and you kind of start to face it, then you can unpack it a little bit. And it can be trying to tell you something. You know, it's a body's response to something real, some kind of a fear, some kind of a concern that you have. So if you look at it, if you face it, if you stop and think about it for a minute instead of trying to brush it off to the side, you can. I think it helps you move forward in life because you acknowledge what's happening in you, and it might be pointing you towards something that you need to deal with. So if you've got a situation in your life, for example, where you hate going to church, or you get nervous going to work, or you have you have a relationship in your life that makes you feel panicky or anxious whenever you get together with your mother-in-law or whatever, whoever it is, if there's a relationship or a situation in your life that constantly kind of gives you that feeling, stop and look at it and think, okay, what's going on there? Why do I feel this way? Instead of just brushing that feeling aside, look at it and let it teach you something. Maybe there's a
reason for the season.
A reason for the season. But maybe there's some unfinished business there you need to take care of. Maybe there's, an old wound that needs to be addressed, or even that, maybe not in a real conversation, but maybe you need to go, oh, the reason I don't like being with my mother-in-law is because she criticized me that one time, and maybe I can let that go now since it was 10 years ago, or whatever. Like if you kind of look at it, you can start to acknowledge what's really going on and deal with it. So that's number one, is to give it a nod. Say what, who. The second then is to write it down, and this is one of these things, I've done this for a long time and found it really helpful, is whenever I find myself kind of laying awake at night, anxious about something or worrying about sort of even unnamed things, I don't even know what they are, but if I just write it down, like write down what's on my mind, and sometimes it might be like, 3 things, and sometimes it can be pages. And, this isn't a new trick. A lot of people do this. But there's something in the process of writing things down that gets them out of your head and onto a piece of paper. At least for me, it always feels like I've deposited them somewhere outside of myself. And it helps. And then when I see things on a piece of paper, then, too, it gives you just a little bit of distance, and you can look at it and start to see it for what it is. So when it's in your head, things in your head always feel a lot bigger and more scary and difficult than they really are, I think.
It. Mm-hmm.
And so when you write it down, you look at it, and then you see it on a piece of paper, and you're like, oh, well, the fact that I have 8 projects due next week at work is kind of a big deal, but I don't need to be, I don't need to be worried about it. I got a plan for getting it done. I'm going to get it done. All right, I can let it go. It's going to be taken care of. Or a holiday's coming up, and you got to spend time with people that are stressful for you. Well, you write it down, and you start to think, spending a day with my family might be a little awkward and uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the world. I'll be all right.
Right, or those bills that people have that they get worried about.
Those bills, right? And you write it down, and you're like, okay, I feel like I have a ton of bills, but really I have 5, and 2 of them need to be paid next week, but one of them can wait a couple weeks. And
Carla, then somehow we have totally run out of time.
That's because I didn't have much time today. I didn't even get to the last one. We'll have to wait till next time.
Do you want to hold over the break and tell us, or do you want to?
It's up to you. I can wait.
Hold over, folks. Number 3 on its way after the break on AM 950 and DougBadgerRadio.com.
Stay tuned for a $1 million bottle giveaway, and you'll also receive free shipping.